You're hanging out in the House of Sunny podcast, where it's always sunny, mostly because of your host, comedian and YouTuber, Sunny Loman. Want to know what Sunny and her friends are thinking about this week? Well, here she is, Sunny Loman.
Welcome to the House of Sunny. As you can tell, Sunny is not here. She claims that she was taking a hiatus from the podcast and social media. The truth is actually much darker. We actually had to fire Sunny. She was gang raping the staff. Unfortunately, there's no evidence of her actually committing any of those assaults, but I kind of feel like she did it. So she was just let go. Anyways, I'm here with a sidekick. I don't even know how to describe him. He's probably the most interesting man, maybe since post-World War II, I think. Maybe the most interesting man in the last 70 or 80 years. My good friend, Ben. Hello, Ben.
Well, Douglas, I don't know exactly how to follow up on that. Sometimes you tell me things that you've never told me before, and it takes me totally by surprise. 70 years, huh? I really appreciate that. I feel really interesting now. Totally.
Well, you should. Ben is actually producing our podcast, and he's going to function as my sidekick today and for the next month while Sunny wrestles with her conviction in the court of public affairs, while Twitter tries her for her crimes. We are going to talk about some amazing stuff. This podcast is going to be terrific. Terrible thick. So get ready. We have a few awesome topics today. First, we are going to play some jokes, which we're going to get to in a second. And then, as we always do. And then the main topic today, we're going to talk about Kavanaugh, and then I want to talk about some of these hoax journal articles that came out that are really funny. And then the main segment is why I couldn't get elected today. And Ben and I are going to share some stories from our ragingly crazy childhoods that would actually disqualify us, I think, from any public office if the truth were known. And we knew each other in the 80s, so we could lie for each other, but we'd be committing perjury.
Preclude me from election. I don't think you even know these stories.
Oh, super. Well,
I hid a lot from you growing up. I hid a ton.
You did. You were known for hiding things from me. That's how you were known.
Literally and figuratively, I hid.
That's right. Well, you hid like Light Bright from me, and you hid Gnipkanop from me.
I did. Your Rock'em Sock'em Robot, you still have not found that.
It's Stretch Armstrong. You totally hid all that stuff from me. So.
Yep. Do you remember that time I hid your Hungry Hippos?
I don't think anyone under the age of like 45 probably knows our references right now.
We're choosing our audience right now.
That's right. We're dating ourselves.
Yeah, I think that was like the most succinct menagerie of 70s games ever.
That's right. So Ben, you have some. Let me play. We've got to always play Joke Guy. Now, Joke Guy.
Yeah.
Oh, also, before we get to Joke Guy, we have a special guest that's calling in. Glenn, you're not going to believe this, but I was actually able to get Dr. Christine Blasey Ford, who's going to be calling in to talk to us for a minute.
I still can't believe that you ended up scoring her contact info. It's nuts.
I did. I have a lot of connections. I was able to get her. She really wanted to come on the podcast, and she's going to be with us in a few minutes. So just hang on for that. But let's play Joke Guy first.
Hey, Doug.
Here we go.
This one's for you since Sunny left you on your own resources for the week or for the month. The teacher asks, now, Susan, how many fingers do you have? Susan says, 10. Teacher asks, right. Now, if you lost 4 of them, what would you have? Susan says, no more piano lessons.
Oh,
Bye.
boy. Hold on a second. Hold on. Ready? Hold on, one more. Oh, dear. That was
something.
I'll give him he has completely gained immunity from ridicule for his jokes because he calls every week with awesome jokes, and he's the most loyal joke teller we have. So he's immune to ridicule, but I will say I'm not going to give that a high mark. What do you because also I think the premise of the joke is wrong. Like when we were kids, my parents made me practice piano without fingers, so I don't even really know what he's talking about.
Oh, mine too. I mean, my parents, I grew up in a musical family, and they really wanted us to, like, get down with some dexterity. So my dad used to put molasses in between my knuckles.
Oh.
And he's like, all right, fucker, play Chopin. And I'll tell you what, it's not easy to play Chopin when you got sticky molasses fingers, my friend.
But that would be, like, pretty delicious.
Well, when he wouldn't look, I'd lick some of that delicious molasses off my fingers, and then I'd play a little.
Right.
Yeah, and then he'd whip me.
That's that was very typical of the '80s, though, the molasses treatment. Because
absolutely.
Parents knew what was best for you at that time, so
they did.
There's no doubt that was very typical of that time, the molasses. But But listen, so now I know you are kind of you're kind of a comedian.
Oh, well,
yeah, you are.
Okay.
So I think you had a joke. I'm not sure if I remember this one, but you said you had a couple jokes.
Yeah, I've got one naughty one, and I have one clean one. Which one would you like to hear first?
Let's do the naughty one because I can't wait to hear it.
Okay. And then the clean one will kind of
cleanse the palate once you shower this horrific, offensive joke on the audience. So.
Yes, it'll be like going to joke confession. Okay, naughty joke coming up. Why did God invent yeast infections?
Why did God invent yeast infections? Why?
So that women would know what it's like to live with an irritating cunt.
Hold on. That's really good. That could be the best joke ever told.
Yeah, I like that one.
Well done, sir.
So let's clean it up here. Why did the Scarecrow get a promotion?
Why did the Scarecrow get a promotion? Why?
Because he was outstanding in his field.
So awesome. That's good. That's
entirely true.
So now that the jokes are out of the way, I got to comment on the Kavanaugh thing. Like, everything that's been said about this has been said, so I don't really want to go through it in detail and rehash everything that's already been said. I only have a couple of really big picture points I think that I've picked up on that are probably somewhat insightful, maybe if you haven't heard them, which is I think that what this reflects is an epistemological crisis. So, first of all, there's a question of how we know what we know. And I think the degradation of rules of evidence and standards of how we believe things. So there's, that those standards have broken down, and they finally made their way, I think, out of the universities. So anyways, the point is that, someone can come out and make an allegation like, you sexually assaulted me 35 years ago. And, traditionally, and by any sort of like rational standard, when one makes a claim, you have to provide evidence for your claim. So, if I say there are pink elephants on Mars, or God created the world, or something like that, the first thing you say is, well, show me why that's true. Show me the evidence. And in this case, and again, this isn't just a handful of kooks. This is a mainstream belief. This woman made a claim, and we're to believe her. That's it, period. And if you don't believe it, you're evil. You're bad. Which is really a religious standard. This is Inquisition level thinking, where someone asserts a claim, God created the universe, and if you don't believe it or you challenge it in some way, you have to be pilloried and you have to be terminated. You have to be destroyed, excommunicated. That's the level here that we've reached. And it's frightening because it's not the kind of country I think I would ever want to live in, particularly if one makes an allegation against me and maybe I'm brought out on The View to the audience, and then the audience starts hooting and hollering. Someone accuses me of something, and then maybe Whoopi Goldberg gives me the thumbs up or thumbs down, and then we decide whether or not the audience should believe me or not. I mean, that's the kind of... That's the level that we're stooping to here. And, besides the obvious breakdown epistemologically, there's no doubt that if we were to, if the shoe was on the other foot, if this was a liberal going up for nomination and the Republicans accused them of the same fact set, the liberals would be demanding due process and demanding a fair process. And so what that tells you is that level of hypocrisy tells you that the left really isn't wedded, or nor do they believe in due process and principle. They believe in it as a means to an end. There was a time when the ACLU defended the most reprehensible sort of people that were alleged of crimes on the basis that everyone's entitled to civil liberties and due process under the Constitution. And the ACLU would put, themselves in very sort of heroic, courageous positions in order to defend the accused and to offer them, due process. And, a lot of people, the mob never likes it when someone's defending someone who everyone thinks is guilty, but nonetheless, everyone's entitled to the presumption of innocence and that, fair process. So now the ACLU has actually come out in the last few days and broken with their, history and their norms and said that they oppose Kavanaugh and we should presume he's guilty. Not on the basis of evidence, just purely based on the allegation. And that is a frightening situation when, this organization, which, you may or may not agree with a lot of the time, the ACLU, who's still been kind of this paragon of civil liberties, is now joining in this sort of like these mob rules purges. It's very frightening, and I think it's very symptomatic of where we're at politically, and I'm not sure how this ends. I don't know if you have a take on that, Ben, but it seems like you can't have those. We can all disagree politically, but if one side says we can just accuse Ben of a crime and he goes to jail if we think it, and other people that want due process, those two sets of people can't coexist in the same country.
Right. I have a couple thoughts. As we know, memory is very fallible, right?
Right.
So, for instance, they've done studies where they take a couple who are having, marital troubles or whatever, and they'll put them in a room and they'll let them kind of go at it, and they'll record everything they say. When they're done with their little session, they'll pull them out and they'll say, okay, what did he say? What did she say? And nobody can get it right.
Right. And that's like 5 minutes ago.
That's 5 minutes ago. So knowing that memory is fallible, knowing that our memories tend to kind of bleed together like the colors on a canvas over time, things get embellished. We even confuse dreams sometimes with reality, over time. that if I were going to make an allegation against somebody for something that happened 35 years, I would hope that I would check with anybody at the alleged party to be like, hey, this was then, right? And this happened, and I said something about it, right? And do you remember how I got home, right? You don't, it's very difficult for me to imagine a traumatic event happening whereby I do not remember how I got home after that.
Right.
That's what you would remember. You know, you remember very clearly when this was. You're not going to mix up the years on that. There's no way.
But your point is great because, you know, when in these kinds of trials, and this is sort of sickening, but it has to happen as part of our process. Like if they'll put like a 5-year-old kid on a witness stand, and some kind of ogreish, you know, prosecuting attorney or defense attorney, I should say, will challenge a 5-year-old on a stand and say, you know, try and trip them up in a cross-examination to defend their clients. And here we have, you know, if a 5-year-old can do it, can Ford do it? I mean, she was not subject to any real cross-examination. You know, it's not even clear whether she, you know, these were recovered memories in some sort of like therapy session or what. I mean, whatever the case is, we don't know because she was just never asked. And the presumption was that it's somehow victim shaming to engage in a kind of normal cross-examination, which is another sick aspect of this. We can't even question the accuser. I mean, that's Inquisition level stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's interesting because the way that the left is acting is exactly how you portrayed it, but it's interesting that as through the years with the Clintons, I still see memes floating around like, you know, 20 accusations of this, 0 convictions, as if that means anything. All that means, I mean, would we say the same about John Gotti? I mean, they tried to get that dude for years and all they could get was racketeering.
Right.
It's when you start replacing when you know the judges and you start putting your own people in there, but the left uses that as evidence that Hillary Clinton and people like that are totally squeaky clean. And it's insane. They don't understand how deep corruption goes, and they don't understand how the Clintons did what they did in Arkansas by ousting everyone that could be an impediment to their agenda and putting all their cronies in. That's how you boss hog that shit.
Right.
But they're absolutely convinced of this testimony. And do you have any idea why the Republicans didn't question her directly instead of just having, you know, that prosecutor in there instead?
No, I think my sense is that they thought it was more sensitive. Again, they're kowtowing to the left. You know, they thought it was more sensitive to have this female prosecutor, not a defense attorney who could have cross-examined her, but someone who typically would be on the side of the accuser, you know, and she was horrible. And they got, you know, fortunately they canned her on the spot and then started asking their own questions. But, you know, they never subjected her to a real cross-examination where they would have challenged her memories and her ability to, you know, the various conflicting testimony that took place. And in any case, I think the point is that, you know, there needs to be a process and a fair process. And the fact that people like, you know, Matt Damon goes on SNL, you know, which I regard now as like state propaganda.
Oh, yeah.
And sends up Kavanaugh and Ellen DeGeneres, decries anyone who doesn't believe her. And, you know, these are like mainstream people. This is not just a bunch of kooks. And so we've reached this point where apparently if a liberal accuses a right-wing person of a crime, it's true, and you have to prove your innocence.
Absolutely. And then they, you know, they want to say that, you know, innocent until proven guilty in a court, but this is a job interview. Like, when's the last time you went to a job interview when some random person walked in and said, 30 years ago, Doug took my banana? You know what I mean?
And the thing is it's not just a job interview. It's a lifetime appointment to the Supreme Court. And the accusations are not like you stole a stapler. The accusations are you engaged in gang rape. You like sexually assaulted someone. So as soon as you're making those levels of accusation, you know, just in terms of like a fair process, you know, it's a value to have a, you know, due process is not just arbitrary. due process came out of hundreds of years of these kinds of cases, and are juxtaposed against the Inquisition and monarchical regimes and dictatorial regimes where people are accused and forced to prove their innocence, in some sort of kangaroo court. So this sort of process is not arbitrary. We have these rules of evidence for a reason, and it doesn't matter that it's a job interview. It's not. And secondly, could you imagine, like, at just any typical company, you just walk in one day and the boss says, "Hey, Ben, yeah, you're fired. Susie accused you of sexual assault 35 years ago, and you're gone." I mean,
right.
of course you'd have grounds to sue, right? I mean, you could sue the company for wrongful termination, and you would be right. So the fact that, we don't extend those same standards to a hearing with a Supreme Court justice that you would extend probably, if you worked in a convenience store and were fired and could sue the company is preposterous. So.
Right, and the whole fact that the Republicans didn't really come back hard on her or ask any really tough questions about the contradictions is the fact that they're starting off with the premise that they are backed into a corner already. And if they're hyper aware that if they're seen as being unsympathetic to this person, it's just going to snowball all the worse.
Right.
But they could have rode just the plane flights. Like, are you afraid of flying or are you not?
Which is a lie.
Because both of those things can't be true. Like, right. You're only not flying to Hawaii.
She's afraid to fly east. She can fly west, no problem.
Yeah, she's like, I have a fear of Delta. Like, what? Like, okay.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, the funny thing about the whole situation with the senators, I think it's one of the reasons why there's a process for dealing with these kinds of charges. You're supposed to Feinstein should have presented those charges confidentially months ago, and they would have done an investigation where confidentiality could have been protected. But once you leak it like she did, it creates a circus and a mob circus. And so now you're putting the Republicans in a really politically precarious position because they don't want to be seen as, beating up this woman. At the same time, they have to protect this guy, and it's only fair that this guy gets a hearing. And, in a real court case, in a trial, the defense attorney would have ripped her apart. And so, but because this is, an advise and consent hearing, it's not a trial, they really couldn't do that. So that's why the Senate has those procedures in place in the first place. So this whole thing was a circus. It was a disgrace. And it's pretty horrifying. I think this might be the first shot across the bow, because we're starting to see, this kind of gets us into our next topic a little bit, but we're starting to see this academic craziness really manifest in politics and law. And there was a story this week about, and I'm sure a lot of you have heard this story, there were 3 actual professors, this is in the Wall Street Journal, they put out, they said about a year ago, they tried to publish 20 fake journal articles, and they got 4 of them published. And did you hear about this at all, Ben?
Yeah, I did.
Okay, so one of them, I'm going to read a little bit from this article because it's so hilarious. So there are these 3 academics, and they are left-leaning, admittedly. So these aren't like crazy right-wing people by any stretch. These are people of that world. And they're so concerned with the sort of like grievance studies and the inability of anyone to criticize or challenge any of this so-called scholarship that they just started publishing bizarre articles and seeing if they could get published. And of course they did. Here's one. I'll read you this one, Ben. So the author admits that my own anthropocentric... Okay, let me back up. The journal in question, the journal was Gender, Place, and Culture. They published a paper online in May whose author claimed to have spent a year observing canine sexual misconduct in Portland, Oregon parks. The author admits that, quote, my own anthropocentric frame, unquote, makes it difficult to judge animal consent. Still, the paper claims dog parks are, quote, petri dishes for canine rape culture, and issues a call for awareness into the different ways dogs are treated on the basis of their gender and queering behaviors, and the chronic and perennial rape emergency dog parks pose to female dogs. That was published.
That's one that got published?
That got published.
Who published it?
So the author Helen Wilson had claimed to have a doctorate in feminist studies, but the author of this article says, quote, none of the institutions that offer such a degree could confirm that she had graduated from their program. So all she did is like call around, like, who is this author? And no one could even confirm that she was who she said and that she even had a degree. Yet they were willing to publish this woman's paper. And it turns out that the email to Helen Wilson was actually answered by James Lindsay, like a math doctorate. And he figured out that these people were collaborating on these hoaxes. Now, interestingly, with this dog thing, this dog rape stuff, it actually, I don't know if I ever told you this, but I invented, I'm an inventor. And at one point and this is the first time I thought like this invention could go to work, could be, supported in this dog rape culture. I figured out a way to blend a dog whistle with a rape whistle.
Oh.
And I call it a dog rape whistle. And I never really thought there could be a use for it, but now that we have academic research supporting the dog rape culture, this could actually be a huge product, right? I mean,
so the dog blows the whistle.
Correct.
But only humans can hear it?
No, only other dogs can hear it. That they know that the dogs know that a rape is going on. Now, my first studies, it just resulted in more dogs raping one another because it alerted them that a rape was going on. And dogs being dogs, they just joined in on the rape. So I'm working out some of the bugs in the dog rape whistle, but I think there's something there.
Oh, man. I think that's going to take off.
Right? Yeah, like the hula hoop. So there was another one that I want to point out that was really funny. There was actually a couple. One was from it was from a journal called Fat Studies.
What?
And the article claimed that bodybuilding is fat exclusionary. And proposes a new classification termed fat bodybuilding as a fat inclusive politicized performance. What do you think of that one?
And that was published as well.
Yes.
Oh, that doesn't surprise me at all.
But this is and one of the professors says rightfully that they're dismayed by what they describe as grievance studies take over academia, especially its encroachment into the sciences. The guy says, anyone who questions research on identity, privilege, and oppression risks accusations of bigotry. And again, this seems like a joke to us, because it is a joke to us. But this is real, and now we see how this is manifesting in politics, into a real case where, they couldn't, there's no way they could, the people on the left and their followers are saying, we have to believe her. You can't even challenge someone who makes this kind of an accusation. And of course Brett Kavanaugh is guilty because he went to Yale and he's a white man, because black men never rape, only white people do. And they've been playing the race card this whole time too. So so in other words, Brett Kavanaugh's guilty. And this kind of, you can see why in this kind of, milieu, this intellectual climate, this kind of stuff is happening. I mean, could you imagine the kind of people that are working in this area? I mean, it's unbelievable. So anyways, I wanted to get into this segment that we called Why I Can't Get Elected. And I think that the basic idea is, we grew up in the 80s, right? So
yeah,
Well, 70s and 80s. But we were like kind of teenagers, probably in the 80s. And so occasionally we engaged in some hijinks. And I think I think it's highly likely that if I were to run for office, I could not get elected on the basis of things I did when I was maybe 14, 15, 16. I'll tell you one story right now about why I can't get elected. So, and maybe you've heard this one, but so when I was 14, I had a friend, and he was going out of town. He was like actually moving out of town, and our like gig every night was he and I walked around. And basically gotten into trouble like this. I don't know if that would like. Of course, there's no phones, there's no internet. This is like the early '80s. You're 14, you walk around. I mean, that's really what you do, and get into trouble. So, in the tradition of us getting in trouble, we were like, we got to kind of do like one last thing before this guy's family moved. So we're like walking down this neighborhood street, nice neighborhood, and I said, hey, I got an idea. How about I pretend I'm retarded and I sit in someone's tree in their front yard, and then you go to the door and you say, hey, my retarded brother is caught in your tree and I can't get him out. Now, first of all, do you think this was a good idea?
Yes, and yes.
This is a fantastic 80s idea, right?
It's actually the best news I've heard all day. Because you just forced me to picture you acting retarded in a tree.
You're welcome.
I mean, that's going to keep me awake tonight, man.
That's okay. Well, again, you're welcome. But so I go up in the tree, not knowing how this is going to play out. Of course, was not like really well planned. And he goes to the door, and it's like probably 9 o'clock at night, something like that. Because of course, in those days, like 9, 10 o'clock, you're 14, you just walk around. Your parents didn't care, right? So he goes to the door. I'm sitting in the tree, and the lights are coming on in the house, like the people are answering the door. And naturally, he panics. And instead of staying at the door and going with our cover story, he runs back to the tree to climb in the tree with me, which was probably dumb.
Oh.
Meanwhile, unbeknownst to me, the neighbor across the street had been seeing all this develop. And of course, we know, like, 9 o'clock at night, neighbor hanging in his garage guy, who just sees silhouettes of weird people, like, running and hiding in trees, is probably not going to take real well to this.
Yeah.
And so all I heard was, who are you? And I looked down, and of course the neighbor had sauntered across the street holding a 2x4, cocked, ready to wail on us. And he starts browbeating my friend who was trying to climb in the tree. To make a long story shorter, my friend takes off. He starts chasing him, swinging a bat at him, and I was still in the tree. So at that point, I decided, well, I kind of have to get out of the tree since people are coming out and this guy has a 2x4. So I jumped out of the tree and landed in the road. And this guy stops and turns around like it's like high noon. We're going to have a shootout or something. He like faces me. I'm just standing there like, okay, he's got his 2x4 cocked, ready to go. So I kind of juke move around him, run down the street, and all I remember is hearing the whistle of a 2x4 as it bounded over my head. He threw it.
Jesus!
He threw it at me. He threw it at my head, and it just went over my shoulder and almost hit me in the head. And so I kept running. And now naturally, I'm going to end the story here, but naturally the guy got in his car and chased us and hunted us for another hour in his car. And we were like hiding under cars and stuff. But anyways, I have a feeling, how would I explain this story if I were in 2018, if I were in up for SCOTUS. Do you think I could explain this story?
Absolutely. All I heard was kids running, playing, climbing trees, and then dude throws 2x4 at your head.
Right?
That's nuts.
That's all you heard.
That's all I heard is like, that's what kids do. That dude was like mentally ill.
Well, I mean, he must have thought that we were like robbers or something. I mean,
Yeah, but then didn't he see you?
yeah, I mean, we were little kids. I mean, we weren't like, like 25-year-old guys in masks or something.
Were you like 6'2", tiptoeing around with a black hood and a white bag with a money symbol on it?
No, I probably had like I had Leif Garrett hair from the 70s. Like I looked like Keith Partridge a little bit. I had my short shorts and
You probably had some pony tennis shoes on.
I did have ponies. I had ponies on. Total classic 80s guys.
And for sure you had a big like comb in your back pocket.
Oh, no doubt. No doubt. I had a comb somewhere.
But the thing is how would anyone know if you were running for office? You didn't get busted by the police.
No, but that story, like my friend who knows that story, we told that story to other people because we went to a friend's house while the guy was hunting us.
Oh.
So I'd have to probably try and maybe kill the witnesses. I'd have to have my henchmen go out and liquidate, anyone who knows anything or something.
Oh my God. Oddly enough, your story reminded me of a story that I completely forgot that would absolutely devastate my chances.
Okay, go ahead.
All right, so the years I'm gonna say it's 84. I'm real into heavy metal at this time, as are my friends. And do you remember being like 13, 14 years old, and it was actually a contentious thing in the neighborhood where some kids like new wave or something, or and you didn't like those kids, right?
Right.
You're like, oh, those kids are dorks,
Right.
So there's the metal kids, whatever, metal/punk, whatever, anything naughty. We were into anything kind of naughty that you're not supposed to like. And breakdancing had kind of broken at that point.
Nice.
And we were not into it. We were not having it, right?
Really? Okay.
No. I resisted for a long time. I mean, about 6 months ago, I finally gained an appreciation for breakdancing.
Right. When did you begin to appreciate it?
6 months ago.
Okay.
It was kind of creeper for me. It was like a 30-year creeper drug that took time. Anyway, we're horsing around in my backyard, and one of my friends that was coming to meet us runs up the driveway, and he's like, "Oh my God, you guys, there's some dorks breakdancing." And we're like, where? And the boombox had just come out and all this stuff.
They have a cardboard mat.
Yeah. So there's these guys in the street, and they're doing that thing, and they got their boombox out, and we're like, oh my God, what dorks! So we decided the best idea, was to grab our BB guns.
Oh no.
So we got
naturally
cover.
You would.
Yeah, they're like, duh.
Logical. Of course you would get your BB.
Yeah. So we grab our BB guns, and we're we're gonna take these guys out, right? So so we're firing, and these are like those like single pump daisies where you can literally see the BB. You know what I mean? It's got like an arc to it.
Yeah.
Exactly. It's just like the Coriolis effect is absolutely just whipping your BB out like fucking play.
It's like a Nerf gun, yeah.
Yeah, totally. So we're firing, and it's taken a while, and finally someone responds. Somebody got hit in the ass, and turns
nowadays
around.
They would call the SWAT team, but go ahead.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, there'd be paramilitary troops and like Black Hawks like swooping down. But like all of a sudden this kid gets hit. We're like, yeah, we're laughing. And he runs into the Saldana's house. And we're like, oh no. So the Saldana's were these badass Mexicans that, you don't mess with these guys. Like they will kill you.
Right.
So we're like, no, oh no. How could we be so stupid? It was close to their house. So we run about 2 blocks away into my other friend's yard, and we're like, oh shit, that was dumb, huh? Yeah.
Shouldn't have shot those guys with BB guns.
Yeah.
That was
we were
thinking
thinking
not a good strategy.
We felt at that time that we had just shot the wrong people. So so we're standing there and we're horsing around, and I'm not kidding, 40 minutes goes by, something like that. all of a sudden, out of nowhere, upon us are the two Saldana kids and a giant Mexican man who's either their uncle or their dad.
Oh.
And we were not facing the right way to see them around the corner, so they were about 5 yards away from us, and we're standing there with the guns. So he comes up and he goes, "Which one of you shot my kid in the ass? Which one of you shot my kid in the," and we're like, "Oh," and simultaneously, I point to one direction and my friend points to another direction, and I say something like, "These kids, we convinced this dude, this man, that some kids ran through the yards and threw their guns at us and ran, both ways at once. They ran both ways at once, and the dude bought it,
Nice.
but he smashed one of the guns in the road."
Oh. That's like
Uh-huh.
Billy Jack type stuff. Like he didn't have the goods on you, but he was going to make sure this didn't happen again.
Oh yeah, I mean it was vigilante justice. It was
once again,
perfect.
He was accusing you. You didn't have due process. Like
Right.
you denied it. So if you were being nominated and going through confirmation, I think this would derail you for sure. Did someone write about this in the yearbook too? Because remember they were throwing the yearbook things at him.
Oh, dude. I mean, this story became famous at my school.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, so if anyone went back in time and you're like, okay, who did this guy go to school with? Let's see what kind of guy he was growing up. Any number of dozens of people could say, well, yeah, Ben liked to shoot people with BB guns.
He just liked to shoot, but yeah, you're like a psychopath. You could never be on the court. It's crazy.
No, heavens no.
Hey, by the
Heavens
way,
no.
I'm getting a call. I promise that Dr. Ford. Okay.
What?
Dr. Ford is going to join the call. Hold on a second.
Wow.
Let me see if I can. She's calling in right now.
Hello?
Dr. Ford?
Yes, this is Dr. Christine Ford.
Oh. Dr. Ford, well, thanks for being on the show. I know you've been through a lot.
Oh, is this Doug?
Yeah.
Yes, hi Doug. Yes, I've been through a lot, thank you.
So we were just talking about like how lame your testimony was and how like no one corroborated your story and like you really were never subject to any cross-examination, but be that as it may.
I feel like, I'm just sitting here trying to decide which one of you is currently lying on top of me and which one of you is walking by me, allowing the sexual assault of a young lady.
That's probably not me. I'm going to go out and say I'm not.
It's actually me.
Oh, Ben, I told you.
Yes.
It really doesn't matter which one of you because you're both in trouble.
Oh, boy. This is what I feared. Getting this woman on the phone immediately opened us up to liability. So, Chris, Dr. Ford, we were talking about the events in our childhood that would disqualify us from ever seeking elected office.
Yes, that's right. That's why you told me to have my story ready, and I've been thinking about it, and I've come up with one.
Okay, well, why don't you tell us the story about why you would be disqualified from running for office?
I could never be elected into office because of a bad thing I did.
Something bad.
I accused a very prominent man of sexually assaulting me, and it wasn't true. Yes, I know.
Dr. Ford.
But young people will do crazy things.
But wait, you did this when you were younger?
You weren't young.
Well, and maybe you can't tell, but yes, it was like 3 weeks ago. But
actually, she sounds like she's 7, so I'm not sure. Are you an adult?
Yeah.
How old are you?
My therapist has told me that I was stunted at the age of 6, and so I'm just young at heart, I guess.
You're young.
Oh, so you're just in this perpetual Judy Blume You're blooming, Judy. You're just blooming all over the place.
That's right.
Those were very good books that helped me as a young lady explore my sexuality alone without scary boys.
Wow, so I didn't know you could explore your sexuality without boys, but I'm old-fashioned.
All
Hey,
you
Miss
need is Judy
Ford,
Blume.
besides the humpiness at the party, did you have a nice time otherwise?
I only had one beer.
Oh,
But where was the party, actually? Do you remember what year it was or anything? Or
I don't know. I don't remember any of that.
because
I am only 6 years old. I can't be expected to remember things like my address or the date.
Right.
Well, we had some advice. We thought of some advice for you, which is because you had said previously that the party was in 82 and then you said mid 80s, just tell everyone
Yes.
it was a 3-year-long party.
Well, I have heard, this may be a repressed memory, but I did hear that Mr. Kavanaugh has been involved in long date rape kind of clubs that took place over a long period of time. And, it may be that I was involved in that. I don't remember.
Well, as long as you feel that this happened, I can speak for all of our listeners and say, I think it did.
Well, it's not so much that it happened as I really just don't like his boss, and I did it because I didn't want him to have a job.
Wow, you're admitting this now?
Well, I told you this is why I won't be elected to office.
Oh, okay. So,
But you do realize that in addition to that, and we're having fun with these why we can't be elected, that you're also being recorded right now.
Oh, well, doesn't everybody know?
They do now?
It's pretty obvious. I didn't think that anybody really believed me.
well,
You were just doing it for funsies.
Yes, that and because all men deserve to die.
Good point.
All men will die, so no further action is needed.
Right. Now, you two aren't Republicans or something, are you?
No, we would never admit to that because we don't want to.
Okay, good. Because I didn't want to think I was talking to Republicans.
No. We will virtue signal to you and tell you that we think you're incredible. Except for all the lies you've told and all the holes in your story, we think you're phenomenal.
Oh, thank you.
And I love the sound of your voice.
Oh,
Dear. I love your dirty.
you.
I love your dirty
like-
glasses too.
Oh, well, I need reading glasses. I have to admit it. I am not as young as I used to
But
be.
you should try wiping them because they're a little dirty. I don't know if you noticed that. You might have
No,
trouble.
I think I see just fine.
Well, all right. Listen, I think you're going to be getting a call from some law-talking people, like maybe the FBI and some other people. So you might want to call your lawyer after you.
You boys are under the impression that truth matters.
I kind of want. I'm kind of getting a little tired of Dr. Ford here.
Well, I have other things to do anyway.
Yeah. Okay.
Oh, we bet you do.
Okay. Well,
back-
thank you, and goodbye.
Ugh.
Goodbye, Dr. Ford.
God, that was horrible. She's.
Wow.
All right. Listen, we have to cleanse ourselves from that disgusting call. That was like almost pornographic.
It really
Dr.
was.
Ford. She's like she's so diabolical. So I'm going to call a friend of mine.
Yeah.
His name is, I call him Kentucky Guy. And we're going to
Kentucky
ask
Guy.
him, okay, we are going to ask him what he think.
Hello?
Kentucky Guy?
Yes.
All right, listen, so you're on with me right now. I have to get your, first of all, Kentucky Guy is one of the most to the listeners. Kentucky Guy is maybe the second most amazing person I know besides Ben. But I want to ask you, like, why? What we've been discussing is why we can't get elected. Like, Ben and I have both shared some pretty compromising stories about our childhood, and I'm wondering if you have any stories or thoughts on like why you couldn't get elected in 2018.
Well, I would say I could get elected.
What?
And I would be elected if I ran.
Wait a second.
Number one, I don't have anything in my background that would be considered controversial. Number two, the country is right. What are we talking about? Getting elected for Congress, Senate, presidency? What are we talking about?
Well, yeah, anything. Any office or
I
confirmation.
couldn't get elected to presidency because I'm not accomplished enough in my life that would justify me even running.
And you mean that's held people back before? That didn't stop Obama.
Obama hadn't accomplished anything and got elected, but
Or George Bush.
Let's say I ran for U.S. Congress.
Okay.
My district is right of center.
Okay.
And I think Donald Trump has showed us that as long as you stand behind your convictions and you're strong and you fight back, that you can win.
Huh. Yeah. So do you think that was that's certainly the message of the Trump administration? Is that, do you think Kavanaugh did a good job at defending himself?
I do think he did, and it showed that he was a fighter. I think that our side, the libertarian/conservative Republican side, has the moral high ground, and we have economic history on our side. Let me just share a story with you.
Oh, boy.
Back in 2008, I was at my house, and the doorbell rang. And there was two women at my door, and they went to hand me Barack Obama literature. And I sat there and talked to them, and the main reason I talked to them was to keep them from going to other houses to get more votes for Barack Obama.
Right.
So we started talking about economic policy, and I made them think I was sort of a middle-of-the-road person that hadn't decided who I was voting for. And we started talking, and they started bashing, like, energy companies, for instance. And I said, why are we bashing energy companies? I said, there are energy companies. I said, why wouldn't the government help Exxon, Chevron compete against Total and Royal Dutch Shell? And I talked to him for probably 20 to 30 minutes. My wife was in the background, I could see her rolling her eyes, thinking, what is he doing, wasting his time? But before these women left, they said to me, you should run. So here I am, a right-of-center individual, having two Barack Obama workers say you should run. And I think it's because if we, our side, would fight and kind of explain this in terms that most people understand, I think we would be able to even get left-of-center people to become more moderate. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think you're right to an extent. I think there's a segment of the population that's beyond reach.
I agree, but there's 10% of the population that's probably left of center that could be very easily moved to the middle. If you talk about it in a way that makes sense, like Trump said, I will not allow the United States to become Venezuela.
Right.
That people understand that.
Right.
Somebody who's 25 years old doesn't even know what the Iron Curtain was, so they don't even know what socialism really is.
Right.
So I do think I could get elected because I would fight. If I was one of the Republican senators during this whole confirmation, I would have pointed out the flaws of every Democrat senator there on the panel. I would have said, Dianne Feinstein, you're so incompetent, you had a Chinese spy on your payroll for 20 years.
Yep.
Blumenthal, you lied about your record in Vietnam. That's one of the most deplorable things I could even imagine somebody doing, as people went over there and sacrificed their lives, and you lied about it.
Right.
And then I did remember reading something about the senator from Delaware had admitted, I don't know if it's true, but he admitted to maybe beating his wife, and I would have brought that up too. I just think we need to fight, and I think if our side fights, we win more elections. So I do think I could get elected. I couldn't get elected to Congress in Manhattan.
Right.
I will admit that, no matter even what I did.
So if they looked into your background, though, do you think there's anything that they could find?
No, I've kind of lived a very boring, common man life. There's really nothing I've done. I've never stolen a car.
Huh.
I've never embezzled money.
Okay.
I've never thrown ice at a bar.
Well, now, if you did that, we'd have to disqualify you, because when you're in college, if you drink and get rowdy in a bar and throw ice or something like that, I mean,
Yeah.
that's beyond the pale.
Right. Well, I have driven over the speed limit numerous times, so that might be a problem.
Oh, dear. Yeah, you're in trouble. What about your yearbook? Did anyone ever...
You know what? I don't even know where my yearbooks are. I never was into living in the past.
Oh,
so
smart.
even like when I was in high school and somebody gave me a yearbook, I think I just threw it away.
But see, I think that's proof that you're guilty, because it shows that you were hiding evidence.
That's possible. Yeah, I guess they could come from it at that angle, and I would be guilty because I'd have to prove my innocence, and I'd have no way of proving my innocence because I don't have the yearbook anymore.
Okay. Well, hey, Kentucky guy, that was awesome. Thanks for setting us straight.
Okay.
You're bulletproof. I think you should be running for office. You're the only one that can make it.
I will announce it here first. How about that?
Yeah, please do. You'll tell us first.
Yes.
Okay. Thanks, Kentucky.
Thank
Bye.
you. Bye.
Yeah, I mean, his past sounds a lot cleaner than mine.
Yeah. Well, I have about 20 more stories to tell, so I think we're going to have to continue this segment next week.
Oh, yeah.
Because like you and I both, we could probably fill 3 months.
Oh, easily.
Because that was 14. It got worse. So.
Right.
All right, everybody. I think we're going to end it there. This is an amazing show. If you want to call in a joke next time, here's the number: 707-681-5834. If you call in a joke, we'll always play it, no matter what. Also, you can email me at ratcapblog@gmail.com. My blog is The Rational Capitalist. So you can, and there's an email link there. If you want to email the show and maybe tell us one of your crazy stories from your childhood, then email me, and we'll read your crazy story on air, maybe. So, Ben, thank you for your initial production, and I'll see you next time.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Thanks for listening to the House of Sunny podcast. Go check out Sunny on YouTube at her channel, House of Sunny. Everything Sunny does is fan-funded. And because she's likely to get kicked off and demonetized on every platform at some point, please support her over at patreon.com/House of Sunny. Become one of Sunny's elite squad and have access to behind-the-scenes footage, t-shirts, special events, and more.